Welcome to MAM 207, reimagining your mainframe workloads with agentic AI. Some of our customers struggle with high costs, increased risks, and lack of agility by hosting their core applications on the mainframe. And my job is to work with these customers to help them modernize and migrate these workloads into AWS to help increase agility, reduce costs, and mitigate those risks. I'm Paulo. I'm the worldwide tech leader for mainframe modernization at AWS, and I'm honored to be joined by Anuradha Verma, Vice President of Product Development at ADP, and Douglas Santos, Mainframe Platform Executive at Itaú Unibanco. Good morning, guys. We'll share their stories on their reimagined journeys with AWS Transform and Kira. Thank you. So in this session, we'll cover specifically the reimagine pattern. So we'll start by describing what it is. We'll then describe what are the challenges that are common to reimagine journeys. We'll go through the role of AWS Transform and agentic IDE tools like Kira, and we'll go explain what they are as well in case you're not familiar with them. Then Anu is going to explain the ADP's journey and the outcomes of using this methodology to reimagine the mainframe workloads. Then Douglas is going to explain Itaú's journey doing the same thing. And we're going to wrap up with some of the launches we had with AWS Transform this week and how you can also get started on your journey. So when customers start modernizing their mainframe workloads, they have to face a strategic decision right at the beginning. They have to figure out what are the strategies they're going to use when they're modernizing their mainframe workloads. What is the right combination of patterns to meet their business goals? So customers often use replatform, which allows you to do a quick mainframe exit. It means recompiling your COBOL code to run on x86 and run on top of a runtime who provides capabilities that are similar to the ones available on the mainframe, so you can maintain functional equivalence. Another pattern that's very common is refactor. Refactor allows you to convert your COBOL code into modern languages like Java, and you run that Java application with libraries that also provide mainframe-like capabilities to maintain functional equivalent as well. But allows you to at least leave the mainframe technology stack, right? So you have a technology refresh. Another pattern that's very common is reimagine. Reimagine is what customers use when they have to rethink their business processes and their applications. So they want to retire some of the business rules, add business rules that are now relevant to their needs, and also change the architecture from scratch. So let's say you have some validation logic used to run before, but those were related to a regulatory requirement that no longer exists, so that those portions of code are never executed. It just adds to the maintenance stall. You can remove those. If you need to add new capabilities to compete with digital native businesses in your environment, in your ecosystem, you can add these new capabilities. And if you, let's say, have batch processing providing D+1 information to customers, you can re-architect them into event-driven architectures providing real-time information to your customers. There are many other patterns that we don't have here on the slide, but depending on what your needs are, they might also become relevant, like retire, retain, replace, and so on. And what makes reimagine different than the other patterns is the first thing that's different is the scope. When you do reimagine, you usually do it at a smaller scope. So instead of migrating an entire system, you focus on an application feature. This allows you to do more frequent deployments and get more value early, right? So you can focus on important features that provide a competitive advantage and release them as soon as possible. When you do that, you also have the other side, which is you add complexity to your environment, right? You have added integrations and so on. So you also have to look after that, and we'll cover that in a few minutes as well. The governance is also different. Instead of having a centralized governance with, like we do usually with replatform and refactor, the governance is distributed across different business units. Each tribe owns their own application modernization development, so they'll have their specific systems that they own and have to modernize. On skills, customers, if they're doing replatform refactor, it requires knowledge of the modernization tooling. So if you're doing replatform, you need to know how to use those replatforming tools. If you're doing refactor, you also have to know how to use those refactoring tools. But when you're doing reimagine, you have to know how those legacy applications worked, where you want them to be, and then just go through your regular software development lifecycle. So it doesn't require any specialized skill on tooling. And the investment on Reimagine is usually higher as well. It's going to take longer for you to be able to get to your end state, but at least you can get value more frequently. And then once you get to the other side, you're already at the technology stack that you wanted to be in the beginning. And as I was saying, once you start doing the migration at smaller scopes, what happens is you have to create all of these interconnections between AWS and the mainframe, and you have to manage that coexistence. So you have to set up application-to-application integration patterns. You have to set up application-to-data integration patterns, and also data-to-data integration patterns. So if you need the AWS applications to access applications that are still in the mainframe, you have to set it up. If you need the AWS applications to access mainframe data, that's also something that needs to be set up. And lastly, you may also have to set up data replication between the mainframe and AWS so the data can be consumed by applications on AWS or for data analytics, for example. Collaboration is also very important. As you start doing Reimagine with distributed governance, you have different teams focusing on different applications. And if application A has a dependency, a downstream dependency on application B, and the team that owns application B already modernized it to AWS, once you bring application A to AWS, it doesn't make sense for that application to be calling the legacy version of application B, right? You don't want to be going back to the mainframe if it's already modernized on AWS. So all this work needs to be coordinated across these different business units. In the transition period, you also have to probably maintain a modernized version, a legacy version of your application, and then encourage all your consumers to use the modernized version. So you have to have mechanisms to influence these business units' roadmaps so that they can prioritize consuming the modernized version. And you also require tools that understand both the mainframe and the AWS environment. So you can set up those application-to-application, application-to-data, and data-to-data integration patterns. And the main challenges we see customers facing when doing Reimagine, are related to knowledge. So when you're doing reverse engineering, you need SMEs to spend a lot of time analyzing the legacy code, any documentations that you may have, but it's likely that you have gaps in the documentation, and the people that originally developed the application is no longer around. It's no longer employed or retired, right? So that's one of the challenges. The other challenge is on the forward engineering. The analysts that are reviewing the business rules that were extracted by the manual reverse engineering have to then coordinate with the developers building the modern version of the application to make sure that the modern version is actually aligned with the specifications that were created based on the legacy application. That's also a challenge. And if you sum it up, it's basically a knowledge crisis, right? You have a lack of SMEs, manual processes take a long time and they don't scale. So these were problems that customers came to us for help with. We've traditionally been focusing mostly on refactor and replatform, but we decided to start investing as well to help customers that are on the Reimagine path. And to help these customers, we proposed a combination of different AWS services. The first one is AWS Transform to tackle the reverse engineering piece. And the second one is Kiro. So if you're not familiar with AWS Transform, it's the first agentic transformation tool for mainframe workloads. It also works with other enterprise workloads. But in this session, we're going to cover the mainframe capabilities. It helps you extract the knowledge from the legacy applications. So let's say you don't have documentation describing how your application works. You can run it through AWS Transform and get a dependency analysis, the technical documentation explaining the execution flow, input, output, error handling, and all the integration. You can also get the business rule extraction from it. You can get dependency mapping, you can do decomposition, and many other things. So it helps save a lot of time that your SMEs would have to spend doing the reverse engineering. Kiro is an agentic IDE tool. It works based on spec-driven development. So you write the specs with Kiro, and then it generates the code for you. We get all the outputs from AWS Transform. We load them into Kiro, and then we guide Kiro into building that modern version of the application. So to get into more details of how it works, we start by loading these mainframe artifacts into an S3 bucket that we connect to AWS Transform. AWS Transform is going to analyze your code base. It's going to look at all the dependency mapping. It's going to do the classification of all your components, what is COBOL, what's JCL, what's copybooks. It's also going to do the cyclomatic complexity calculation, so you know which components will be harder to modernize versus others. Missing files analysis, this can really impact a modernization project if you can't know what you don't know, right? So if you don't load those files into AWS Transform, AWS Transform cannot infer what was the logic contained in those components. We can also do, as of this Monday, data lineage and data dictionary analysis. So you can know which components are using which data sources and how they're using it. So if they're creating those data sources, if they're editing, if they're deleting it, or just updating it. And data dictionary allows you to explain what those data structures contain. Because we're limited to 8 characters in most of the fields that we have in mainframe applications, you really can't know what they mean, right? So here, Transform is going to help infer what those fields actually mean in real life. Then we go into the documentation. In the documentation, we're going to extract the technical flow, all the inputs, outputs, error handling, as I said, and also the integrations. You can do the business rule extraction. So we're going to get, at the component level, every business rule that is implemented in the COBOL code extracted into English language. Then we get all these component business logics, and we group them by entry point, providing you the view from the application level. So at the application level, you can see all the Kix transactions that are entry points, all the jobs that are entry points, and then you can get a summary at the application level as well. We also allow you to do decomposition, so you can define what are the domain names yourself, and then provide a few seeds that are examples of components in those domains. And then Transform is going to do a dependency tree analysis to find other components that are part of the same domain, and also do a semantic similarity analysis. And lastly, it's going to help you plan your migration. This is for the reimagine perspective, right? We also have other capabilities for other patterns. But on the planning step, it's going to get all your domains, and it's going to order them in the ideal migration waves. So it's going to first start with the downstream dependencies. Let's say you have common components part of one domain. You migrate them first so that you don't need to, because you're going to need them to work with the other domains that are dependent on them, right? And you don't have to be going back and forth between the mainframe and AWS if you migrate first the downstream dependencies. So then what we do is we get all these outputs from AWS Transform, mainly the business rule extraction, documentation, and the original source code, data lineage and SMF activity as well. And we load them into Kiro. And the first thing we do is we tell Kiro how to use those artifacts. So you tell Kiro, use the business rules to do the requirements creation. So Kiro is going to create the user stories and acceptance criteria based on the business rules. We tell Kiro to use the documentation to understand the execution flow. And we even tell Kiro to use the source code if it needs to get any technical implementation. Let's say you have a tax calculation portion of your code. That formula is not in the rule. Then you can get it from the COBOL code, right? We do it in this order so that Kiro doesn't generate a modern application that mimics the COBOL behavior entirely. Then what Kiro does is it starts generating the specs. So it's going to create the requirements document with all your user stories, the acceptance criteria, and it's going to hand it over back to you, say, are you OK with these requirements that I've just created? You can go ahead and change them, or just let Kiro continue. It's going to generate the design for you. The design is going to be your technical architecture, as well as the application layers, data persistency layer, and so on. And if you are OK with that as well, it's going to create the tasks. And then you go task by task to generate the code, the tests, infrastructure as code, and even the data transformation as well. Right, so you can transform the data models to the cloud, and then generate the application code to consume this data. You can also use Kiro to run those tests that it created. So you can run unit tests, integration tests to the endpoints that you've just modernized. You can also have tests that will validate the business rules were implemented correctly on the modern version. And you can even integrate. I gave the example of application A calling application B. If application B is already modernized and you're moving application A now, you can provide Kiro with the APIs, the Swagger documentation of application B, and instruct it to, instead of calling application B in the mainframe, use that API documentation, that API contract to call application B already on AWS. Let's save questions to the end, if that's OK. We'll be on downstage. And we have many metrics to share on the efficiency gains of this approach, but there's no one better to talk about those than customers. So I welcome Anu to talk about ADP's story and the results.
Paulo. All right, I'm Anu Verma, VP Product Development for ADP. I primarily manage our compliance solutions division, and I'm focused on tax. I'm here to talk about a journey of how we are looking at tax and how we are looking to modernize our one of most complex and critical system that's doing our regulatory and compliance needs. So just before I start, a brief introduction about ADP. We are #1 HCM provider in 140 countries. We have around 1.1 million clients over 140 countries, and we have customers from all sizes, from mom and pop shops to big Fortune 500. We actually run 1 in 6 payrolls in US. With that kind of scale, our clients trust us with scalability, reliability, and security, and most trusted expertise. So with that in mind, tax becomes very, very critical because it's about compliance and it's about keeping them secure and avoiding any penalties and challenges. So from that in mind, we are heavily focused to relook at our ADP's tax engine, and which is on mainframe, and relook at how we can just not modernize, but reimagine also. Because this is one of the systems that's been there for a couple of years, and as systems grow, they become more and more complex. There are a lot of processes and rules that get embedded in that system. So just to speak about the complexity and the scale of this system, we have around 77 million plus employee statements yearly. We deposit $1.6 trillion on behalf of our clients to the agencies. We support 8,000 tax jurisdictions. We have 10,000 plus forms and its variations with different agencies. And in order to support everything, there are 12 million plus jobs that get executed in mainframe. And the biggest challenge that we see with a compliance system is that we are dependent on the changes that the agencies bring upon in a very short period. So we have to react on time, stay compliant, so that our clients can stay compliant with it. So with that in mind, we started the journey of modernizing tax a couple of years back. And with that, what we realized is that just plain modernizing from one tech stack or one module to another would not be the best investment or the strategy. So we rethought our strategy. And now we are in a path where we are reimagining tax ecosystem. We are just not moving the system from A to B. We are rethinking every process. We reimagining what should move out of code and should be a rule or should be completely externalized, and so that we can react faster to the changes. When we started this journey, initially, our initial approach was to build a new system and start migrating clients into the new system. And soon enough, we realized that that's a long journey. And then you can never be at parity for all the features that quickly. And then clients have to be brought back sometimes. So we quickly changed our approach. And what we did was we are now doing an in-place modernization. So we are taking the big system and we are looking to break down into smaller components and look at how to modernize those small components and reimagine while we are modernizing it as well. So as I talked about the scale of ADP and its ecosystem, we are seeing a couple of challenges, and I'll talk about how we are mitigating or how we are looking at solving those as well. One of the challenges is rising complexity. These are complex, fragmented, and rapidly evolving tax ecosystems. When things change, they have to be changed very rapidly. And as things have been done over years and they have been embedded, it sometimes becomes challenging to meet those complexity needs. As our customers are becoming bigger and more customers are onboarding, the second challenge we are having is low tolerance for errors, and that's rightfully so, because we are a compliance solution, and tax is about compliance and being accurate. So to meet our increasing customer needs, as well as agencies' needs to stay compliant, and provide data that's very well vetted and clean, we have to make sure that we are accurate when we modernize or reimagine. The other one is adaptive compliance. The demands for systems that adapt instantly, learn continuously, and validate intelligently is very, very critical, because in any new modern system, we cannot run on static rules. They have to be adaptive. And so that it's very critical for us to build a system that can scale up for those kind of complex needs. And of course, global scalability stays on top of our mind. When we run and crunch our filings during year end or quarter end, we do millions and millions of filings, and we get 2 weeks to mail out or e-file and get the acknowledgement back from all the agencies that we support. So the time to react is very less for us, and we have to scale up and produce so that our associates and our clients get enough time to validate and provide their approvals and fix or correct in case there is some challenge. So here's our approach. What we did, as I talked about, is we have broken down our big legacy system into multiple modules. And we are taking one module at a time and looking at reimagining that module. Of course, there are some challenges with it, because as Paolo said, system A is on-prem and system B got reimagined or modernized. The connectivities have to stay back because there is a data transition back and forth. But so far it has been scaling for us, as long as we make sure that it's very well tested and validated. It's proving that it's working out for us. The other advantage we are seeing is that the clients all the clients get to get the same module at the same time. Instead of building the whole system and migrating clients, the clients are getting early access to the features that we are producing. So it's really helping us out in that ways. The other approach we took was that instead of doing form by form or state by state, we are taking a file type or a filing type, and we are looking at all the states that have the similar kind of filings, so that we can do it for all clients at the same time for all filing types. So for example, if we are doing a SUI filing, we would rather do for all clients at the same time for all states, so that minimal differences across the states can be tested and validated and fixed at the same time. And overall, the biggest help that we've got is through AWS Transform to understand our ecosystem. While we are reimagining our system, it's very critical for us to leverage this tool to use agents and extract the business rules and processes and understand the interdependencies, so that we can focus on rethinking about how we want to do tax again, than thinking about what the existing rule base is. And it's really proving out to be really, really helpful for us. And it's freeing up our SMEs to focus on doing other tasks while the system is helping us extract these processes and rules. So we've entered a collaboration model with AWS, and it's really turned out to be very, very helpful to us. We took a small, not small, but 70K lines of code, which is one filing type. And we leveraged the help of AWS, and AWS experts helped us out to build agent to extract those rules and test with those rules. So what we did was we took these lines of codes and 214 legacy programs, and the business rules were extracted, the documents were generated, and AWS Transform helped us write test cases, as well as reimagine how these rules should be extracted as well as represented in our new code base. So AWS Transform helps us with the agentic system, and it takes our code, assesses the JCL, COBOL programs, databases, and helps us convert the code into business logic as well as business rules. It helps us analyze the data, and with the help of Kiro, the code is generated, and we can test that code and analyze and revamp the system accordingly. So we are not doing a A to B transformation. We are rethinking whether even it does make sense in this new world. And do we need to really write so much of code? Can it be a configurable system that even our business can help configure? So this is the reimagined tech architecture. We are looking to modularize our system, separate the front end, back end, and persistent layers. We are leveraging many services from AWS, and we are building it in AWS multi-region, and leveraging many services like EKS, Fargate, OpenSearch, MKS, and for data persistence, we are leveraging Postgres and S3 and a couple of Redshift. Now we are really entering into, and this is helping us scale for different needs. The biggest advantage we are seeing with this is tax being a seasonal business, we can very quickly scale up when it's the filing time and scale down, helping us save a lot of cost in the monolithic infrastructure that we had before. So while there is a long journey ahead, these are the early results. AWS Transform helps us extract 8,000 business rules from a couple of programs, 214 to be exact. And what we saw was it gave us an efficiency gain of 2x. And the other bigger factor was that we needed a SME in that area who understood the code around it to extract these rules, whereas AWS is giving us through Transform very quickly. Of course, it needs a little bit of human in the loop to understand that whether we are accurate or not. But that's also simplified because we can test the system before and after through these tools, and we can deploy with confidence that this works for us. And the other advantage is, as we are doing module by module, we can quickly extract these and integrate and develop code and take it to production and see the wins very quickly as opposed to waiting for months or years. And it's really coming out to be helpful for us. This AWS Transform has helped us with being flexible, addressing the journey of our extraction of business rules, scale up to the needs of our client base, as we have 1.1 million clients and we have to produce it in 2 weeks or lesser. It's helping us scale up and scale down. It's helping with our compliance needs and quickly adapt and change as new compliance rules are added. And overall, it's given us a very big productivity lift. So with that, we have set up some goals for ourselves for using Transform and taking this journey forward. We have set ourselves a goal to finish our filing modernization by 2028, take all the form filings and address for all client types in all markets, simplify the compliance changes by 80%, and reduce the manual exception handling by 50%. What we are doing next is utilizing Transform to modernize our tax engine and looking at making the engine more scalable and robust with faster and more accurate filings. Not only just look at the errors, but also help our clients by producing insights and anomalies so that they can detect whether, even if the filing looks right, they can sense that and figure out if the changes are okay and it's accurate to file, and proactively do issue identifications. With that, I will hand over to Douglas.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Douglas. I'm mainframe and modernization strategy leader at Itaú Unibanco, and my mission is too simple: move thousands and thousands maps to cloud in a small time box. I'm excited to be here to share with you how Itaú Unibanco is using AWS Transform and AWS Kiro to reimagine our core systems. So before we start, let's introduce Itaú Unibanco and talk a little bit about why we have been transforming our organization. Itaú Unibanco is the largest bank in Latin America, operating in 18 countries, over 100 years of history. We have $75 billion in market value, 8.6 billion in brand value, and we are a full bank, offering products and services for 70 million customers. And why we had started this digital transformation? During the last years, all new technologies have changed all the customer habits. Before, a customer went to a branch to do banking. Now, the customer perceives relationship in digital channels and different points of contact. It's not about get a loan or invest money. It's about relationship and lovable experience in digital channels every time, everywhere. And to stay relevant in this scenario, Itaú Unibanco had started a digital transformation based on 6 strategic pillars. Product mindset and design to building products who our customers love, data-driven and agile methodology to solve the real customer problems, AI to boost efficiency and hyper-personalization for our customer, and the crucial part, technology. A technology ready to evolve, scalable, and resilient. And to have a technology ready to evolve, we need to embrace a modernization journey focused on delivering value to our customers and competitiveness for the bank. And what were the main goals for Itaú? First, reduction of dependence between platforms and systems. Second, increase agility, autonomy, and reusable solutions for our teams. Third, improve our time to market. We need to be faster for our business and for our customers. And fourth, be a company analytics by design. And we have been running this journey since 2018, when we started with a small workload running in private cloud, and in 2020, we had started a long-term partnership with AWS to move our workloads to public cloud. In 2023, our commitment was 6% of business service running in cloud. Now we are around 7%, and during the last reInvent, our CIO, Ricardo Guerra, announced a new commitment, 100% in cloud by 2028. Yes, we didn't hear wrong. 100% in cloud by 2028. And what's the number support us to take this achievement? We have done so far amazing work until now. We increased 2,000% of deliveries to production. Our costs reduced 45% in cost per transaction. And we reduced 99% of critical incidents. In summary, we are faster, cheaper, and more available for our customers. And these numbers supported us to make this decision. Then, why we are here? To achieve 100% in cloud by 2028, we have more than 50 years of legacy mainframe programs and 4 years now, 3 years, to fully modernize our platform. And what we faced on legacy modernization? In fact, first of all, we don't know what we don't know when we start this modernization. To discover all the dependencies, to understand all the business rules, we invested 50% the time of our engineering teams to understand what this code does. In test process, we invested 30% of time to test our applications, but the coverage is very small. Sometimes we have 20% of coverage during the test process. And decompose these monoliths in microservices is not simple. And to create a new way to achieve our commitment and speed up our modernization process, we started a feedback loop, a direct feedback loop to AWS Transform team to evolve the products and help us to achieve our commitment. We selected a small subset of payments functionality to test AWS Transform and AWS Kiro. This workload has almost 70 online programs, 107 batch jobs and around 6 kill lines of code. And the target, go to pre-production by reInvent 2025. And yes, we have done. We are running in a pilot in production environment, and we will roll out this functionality for all our customers during January 2026. As Paulo Vitor said, during this process, we have two big steps. First, reverse engineering, when we use AWS Transform, and forward engineer, when we use AWS Kiro. What's the challenge in the reverse engineering process? All the rules scattering across platforms and different programs. We found many misplacement rules belong to another domain in this scenario. And we have only one guy who knows what this code base does. Documentation? No, we don't have any documentation. And AWS Transform supported us in two scenarios. First, a cross-platform extraction of these rules using the business context. It's not a technical documentation, only a technical documentation, or a line-by-line documentation. We extract all the business rules in the business context. It's a game changer for the forward engineering process. And we can create a validation framework that will ensure all the business critical logical is available for the forward engineering process. The impact of this activities will take weeks, months, and quarter now can be done in hours. And then we need to move on. We need to move forward. The forward engineering process using Agent KI had two big problems. First, the quality of the code generated, and two, how can you test this code generated? And using AWS Kiro, we saw a different result of this process. We can generate all the code based on the AWS Transform rules extracted, following all the Itaú's requirements about architecture and quality code, and generated all the test case. The impact, we created automated tests for all the process. We generate a high quality code integrated with all our APIs, and we increased the test coverage from 20% for 80% in this pilot. We are more confident about the coverage and the quality of the code during this process. And what are the numbers that really matter in this process? Looking for the end-to-end process, in the reverse engineer, we observed 96% of time reduction in reverse engineering. For engineering process, 82% of reduction with AWS Kiro. In the test process, the numbers were amazing. 4 times improvement of test coverage with 97% efficiency in the test creation. Looking for the end-to-end, we are 75% faster than a traditional approach. Yeah. Compared with a manual modernization, we are 75% faster. In cost perspective, it's not the priority, but for us it's very important to reduce our costs. We reduced 100,000 MIPS in this pilot. And what are the key learnings and key success factors during this process? First, start small. Test, fail, learn before scale. Second, think about this test using reusable patterns. Patterns here is very important to scale this kind of solution to your organization. And in my opinion, the most important key success factor, executive commitment, is non-negotiable. In this kind of initiative, using Gen AI, testing a new product, you need to get sponsored CIO level sponsorship. And with these numbers, what's next for Itaú? First, expand the solution for all the business communities. Second, standardizing this pilot for all the similar code bases to speed up your process. For sure, continue contributing with AWS team to evolve the product and solve new problems that we will find in your modernization journey. And now we are more confident that we will achieve 100% in cloud by 2028. And our modernization journey is continuous. And I hope this case can inspire you to start or still running this modernization process. And I hope stay here in the next year to share new results and new achievements from Itaú. Thank you, AWS, for the partnership. Thank you, guys, for the attention.
Those are very exciting numbers to look at from these customer stories. And by working very closely with Itaú and ADP and also other customers, we've built new capabilities within AWS Transform, and we announced them this Monday. So we launched the activity analysis, so we can now ingest SMF records 30 and 110, so kicks and batch, and we can provide metrics on executions and then execution time as well. These can feed into decisions on target architectures on AWS. We also launched the data analysis piece, which includes data lineage, showing which components are accessing which data sources and how they're accessing it. And also data dictionary, which describes the fields in legacy copybooks so you can understand it better when you're modernizing them. We also have launched the enhanced chat experience. So this means that you can go on the AWS Transform web app in the chat window, and you can ask questions about the outputs you got from each of the Transform agents. So if you're doing dependency analysis, you can ask the chat, for example, which job is coming after job A in the scheduling chain, right? And Transform can already load your scheduling information from Control-M and CA7, for example. On the automation side, we launched a couple of features as well. Not a couple, I mean, there's 5 there, but within them we also have many. We have the testing environment. So when you do the migration, we provide you with tools to do the comparison between the outputs of your test execution on the AWS side with the mainframe side to find the differences, so you can do the fixes so they behave the same. We have also launched the test plan generation. And this means that we're going to look at the application execution flow, the business logics, and we're going to provide you with an English explanation of what the test cases should be to have positive and negative coverage on all your rules. We also launched the test data collection scripts. So as you create these test cases, we are also going to provide you with scripts you can run on the mainframe to extract the data before you run your application and then after you run your application, so you can replay this test on the modernized version and then check if the results are the same. These testing data can be massive, so you can have hundreds and hundreds of data sets you have to load and tables you have to dump, so this helps a lot. We also launched test automation scripts, so once you have the data, you have the test plan, you can also automate the execution of those tests with a comparison at the end. And if you're doing refactoring, we have a feature called Reforge. It improves the readability of the Java code that we convert from COBOL. And this capability now also generates unit tests to make sure that when we are doing this optimization, we are not doing regression. And we also launched 6 new regions. So we were only on the North Virginia and the Frankfurt region. Now we launched Mumbai, Seoul, Sydney, Tokyo, Canada Central, and London. So if you were excited by the numbers you saw from Itaú and ADP, and you also want to get started on this journey, we have some resources here. Sorry, 1 second. We have a website about AWS Transform. You can get more details in there. You can also schedule an experience-based acceleration engagement with us. This is a no-cost to customers engagement that can help you get started and get something in pre-production in very short few days. And also some more information on AWS mainframe modernization practice. I look forward to working with you in our mainframe modernization journey. Thank you.